Hey, this is Brent with Lykins Motorsports, and this is our bagged up 511 all aluminum FE. If you notice, we had to take a step backward. The pulley that drives the dry sump pump bottomed out on the FE Power timing cover, so had to pull it back off, cut the timing cover down. The balancer spacer, which has the pulley on it, also had to be honed because it didn't have the right clearance for the snout. So one little step backward, and hopefully we'll get caught back up here in a little bit. This is our AVA dry sump pan. It is very tiny, but that's what dry sump pans do. And they're not meant to hold oil, so it's basically just a cover and a pickup point for the pump. So this will be a 4-stage pump, 3 suck, 1 blow. So it's going to scavenge from those 3 points right there, and then it will push into the engine. So first thing I'm going to do, we're going to get all of this taken apart. I'll mark front and front so I can put it back exactly the same way. It doesn't look like I could screw it up, but never can tell. I'm pretty dedicated to screwing stuff up sometimes. And then just make sure everything's clean. And then we'll put the pan on the block, test fit that, and make sure I don't need to fit these holes. While the engine is upside down, I will go ahead and retorque everything on camera so that you guys can double check me, and we'll check our rod side to side clearances and that sort of thing. But let me get some of this taken apart. And this seems to be par for the course. Got all the bolts started on this side, but they won't start on this side, so I'm gonna have to take a die grinder and open these holes up. Good times. So here's a good time for I'm not anticipating any clearance issues, but you just never can tell about some aftermarket stuff. So I'm just rolling the engine over. There's no gasket, so the pan's sitting closer to the block than usual, or than it would be, but just rolling it over, listening for any contact. There isn't any, so we should be good to go. I'll just get this pan off and get these bolt holes clearanced. Okay, and since we don't have an oil pump, I've got my billet aluminum cover on there. We just need to make sure that everything's nice and tight there. And that's it. Now we're ready to put the pan on. All right, so we're getting ready to put our timing cover back on. Before you do this, you should have your timing cover assembly checklist done. Cam, bolt, make sure it's torqued. Gasket, silicone to the block, timing cover seal lubricated. You need to have all your bolts lined out, and a 1/2-inch socket and a 9/16 socket. And then we just put just a very small layer of silicone on the timing cover. Okay, so everything is lubed up. What I like to do is get the timing cover started with one of these 5/16 bolts at the top. Then I'll start the other one. And that'll leave me hanging. In a spot where I can use my timing cover locating tool. So these are worth their weight in gold, in my opinion, and this bigger side will let you use the counter bore for like a small block Ford, or for when you use Jay's timing cover and use a Cleveland seal or something like that. This is normally an FE side, but you want to look for an even gap around the outside of it. And with the bolts loose, you can usually manipulate it whichever way you want to manipulate it. And then I feel of the pan rail and the timing cover rail to make sure that they're halfway flush, and then get the rest of my bolts in and tightened up. All right, got our oil pan bolts clearance. I'm back on that now. It's a shame that we have to spend time working on a $400 or $500 custom oil pan, but that's what I've came to expect. I'm going to put some red Loctite on these little short fasteners and get those tightened up, and then we'll get our oil pan put on. All right, so we're going to check our gasket fitment. Everything looks good as far as placement goes. All the holes line up. This gasket did come out about right here, so I cut it back so it wouldn't block that rear main drain. And now we're just going to put a thin layer of silicone on it and then set our gasket down. A lot of guys want to use the whole tube of silicone. It really doesn't take much. Like my caulking gun tip off right here. I would recommend putting a little bead inside that groove where the timing cover meets the block, but other than that, you just don't need that much. I would recommend absolutely using any type of sealant that you feel comfortable with. This is my Dow Corning 732, and you really want a good seal between the oil pan and the block. If you don't, then it's a possibility you can lose vacuum from your dry sump pump. Not sure what it'll do on this aluminum block, but the AVA dry sump pumps usually will pull almost 15 pounds of vacuum on a cast iron block. I know some guys report having issues with circle track engines and stuff pulling vacuum just because of the blocks. move and squirm around so much. So we got our block siliconed up and put a little bit more right here in this bare spot. We'll lay our gasket down. It should feel tacky, like sticky, like the gasket doesn't want to roam around on you. And then once the gasket's down, you do the exact same thing. Put a nice coating of sealant on the gasket. You just want to eliminate any little imperfections that would cause it not to seal. You don't want a big bead or anything that could potentially break off inside the engine. This is one of those things that you learn by doing, and just a little bit of experience to get the feel of it. I'd like to know what the very first engine that I put together looked like today. I'm sure it was all nasty back then because I didn't have a number of engines under my belt to know what works and what doesn't. Just want to make sure you put adequate sealant back here where that thin spot is, where the oil can drain out of the rear main seal. That dry sump pump vacuum will create a depression and help things move a little bit easier, but you still want to give it a hand. Good thing about dry sump stuff is no pan to pick up clearances to measure, no oil pump drives, nothing like that at all. So we've already checked our main fastener torque. I'm having an OCD moment. We've checked our side-to-side clearance. We've checked our rod bolt clearance. Our rear main is clear. So we'll set this pan on here. Slide that guy around and then start our bolts. All right, still plugging along here. So here is where, here's where we had to have the timing cover milled down. We actually took 400 thousandths off this. So as you can see, this pulley is made into the balancer spacer and the pump mounts over here. We'll get to that in a second. But if this hadn't been milled down, this wouldn't be able to go on far enough. So what we're going to do now, I've got my key in the keyway. We're going to put our balancer on and then check our top dead center. This is a Power Bond race balancer. Ford balancer bolts are all 5/8 thread. So if you foul the engine from turning over, you can pretty easily just draw the balancer on if the press fit is correct. In some instances, you got to use a install tool, but usually a Ford balancer bolt is plenty big enough to just draw these on without no problem. All right, so that's torqued to, I think, 130 pound-feet. Need to check top dead center. The easiest way to do that is with a piston stop without the heads on it. But I was waiting on all this stuff to come in from Aviade and didn't get a chance to do it. So we'll have to use a piston stop down through the spark plug hole. And the easiest way to do that is just to rock the engine back and forth and run that piston stop down until it touches. You don't want it to be so far out that, you know, you get a mark here and a mark way down here. You want to try and keep your marks in here and here so that you can split the difference and see where top dead center is. I'll try to explain all this here in a second. I'm gonna get my piston stop out and we'll get all this dialed in. Here is a cylinder head piston stop, and basically it's this outer thing that I'm spinning right here. You screw that into your spark plug hole, then screw this down inside of this, and then make contact with your piston. Let me see if I can walk you through it. So they make these for, you know, a 14 millimeter plug and then an 18 millimeter plug. So I've got the 14 millimeter plug. You don't need to put any kind of, you know, Wampus Cat clamping on that. You just need to screw it in. And then you just take your inner piece and screw it in. I'm pretty close to top dead center. We'll just get this screwed in, see if we can touch the piston and see where we are. Okay, these pistons have a lot of dish in them, so I had to screw that in pretty much to the hilt. But here's where we're going. So you just put a gentle hand on this, boom. You can feel it stop. So we are at roughly 12 degrees. So what I want to happen is, I'll show you how to do this a little bit better here in a second. I can back that piston stop out and it may, you know, stop me right here or so, but I'll be down here on the other side. I want to try and get as close to top dead center as I can with a stop so that I can just work within this, you know, dimension right here. So what I'll do is I'll put a piece of tape right here and mark it, because we're going to have to move that pointer here in a second. Piece of tape here. Then we're going to go completely around the opposite direction, and it should stop, in theory, somewhere in this spot. And I'll have a piece of tape right here too, and then we can mark it. Okay, so I'm going to put it in reverse. And we'll go all the way back around. You'll get a little bit of drag because that piston stop is essentially acting almost like a spark plug. So you'll build a little bit of compression in the cylinder that it's in. And it's kind of fighting me a little bit right now. I'm just going in tiny increments. And we stop right there. So I'm going to mark that. Then you can see that it's off. So I'm going to have to move my pointer that direction. What you can do is you can take a tape measure from here to here, find the middle point, which would be somewhere around in here, and then you'll know how many degrees to move it. Okay, so my middle point is about 3 degrees after top dead center. So I'm going to have to move my pointer about 3 degrees. That way I'll just eyeball it, then we'll try it again. Okay, we got a new piece of tape. I'll go around the opposite direction. When you get closer to the to top dead center, it will start to fight you a little bit. Okay. Okay, then we go back the opposite direction. You can hear my creaky old engine stand. You can hear it hissing at me when I get close to top dead center here. All right. So I think we're going to be close on that one. Again, we'll take a tape measure where our middle of these 2 points are, and it should be at top dead center. And that's where we are. So I can lock these down, make sure that they won't move. That is my billet adjustable timing pointer, by the way. So good for all these aftermarket applications. And things like an ATI balancer, you know, they're off about 7 degrees. You can pretty much count on it. Power Bond is usually not off very much, Romac, those sort of things. But it's nice to have the adjustability in there. So now we can get our oil pump mounted, and I'll show you how all of this works. Okay, here's my messy workbench, and here is our Aviade dry sump pump. This mounts, so sometimes you can mount these to like a motor plate, and then you can have some adjustability. This one bolts to this mounting plate. This acts as your inlet to, if you remember on a normal street FE, you have an oil filter adapter. So this takes place of the oil filter adapter, and this is your inlet for your oil going into the engine. And then these are your suction, your scavenge points from the pan. So the pump rigidly mounts to here, and you set your belt tension with these shims. So we're going to start with no shims, and I've got to get my pulley on here, and then we'll check our belt fitment. Okay, so our belt's going to go on like so. I'm going to need to push this pulley back just a little bit, but as you can tell, it's pretty loose. So you want to be able to slip, just barely slip this belt on, and you should be able to turn the belt about 90 degrees. So what we're going to have to do is put those spacers in here, shim this pump out a little bit, and tighten our belt up. All right, so I got this mounted. It turned out that I had the wrong belt. I've got several belts here. And just put the right belt on and everything lined up. So what you can do is, while it's on the engine stand with the dry sump set up, you can roll the engine over. The belt will find itself of where it wants to ride. So I've been turning this thing over. It wants to go about right here, and it wants to stay about right here. This is guided, this is not, so you can slide this belt off easily. Need to peck that gear on just a hair, and then set my set screws. We've also got a discrepancy with this mounting blade. The hole is not where it's supposed to be for the back 2 screws, so I'll have to contact Aviade about that. But yeah, so this is made, you should be able to slide this belt off pretty easily. And with a bolt in here, you can take a speed handle and just crank this over. And that'll let you prime the engine instead of having to pull the distributor and do all that stuff. Well, we're making baby steps, but we are making progress. I'm waiting to hear back from John at Aviade about these 2 back mounting bolts, since the bolt pattern doesn't line up. I don't know if we're going to have to send the pump back or what, but I'm going to hold off and wait to make our hoses until I get that finalized. We got our BAM lifters in. These are 903 diameter, so a larger diameter for more strength. Makes the cam a little bit bigger too. But we're just making progress. So I just talked to Jay Brown. I was gonna do a motor plate and mount everything to it, but the more I started playing with it, the more that it presented a lot of issues. It contacted this, which is not really too big of a deal. I could have cut it, but on this side, it just posed a lot of issues. Plus we're going to have to use some spacers, since the head sticks out a little bit, and it just started getting more and more difficult. So I talked to Jay, and I said, I absolutely need to prime the oil pump here, just to make sure the lifter's oil, and we got oil at the top of the engine, and we got oil pressure, good oil pressure. And I said, would it be too much of an imposition if I just, at that point, just, unhooked everything and just sent the parts in boxes, and then you could hook it up and hang it on the dyno as you see fit. And he said, yeah, that's not a problem. So that'll make things a lot easier for me as we progress. I don't have to dodge that motor plate or anything like that. So got our March billet aluminum crank pulley on there. Motor needs a little bit of black, a little bit of color. All gray just doesn't really look good in my opinion, but got that on there. And yeah, so we're just making progress. I got some Moroso sheet metal fabricated valve covers to go with it. And we're just making progress. So thank you guys for watching and sticking around with me as we creep up on this one. This is really a fully custom engine. So only engine I know of with Jay's new heads are his dyno mule. So there's a little bit of growing pains to some of this stuff, but we're just making our way through it. I did get the intake adapter port matched. Hold on a minute. Let me show you that. So I matched all this up a little bit better, and matched the rubs up a little bit better. Drilled and tapped this for a 1/4 inch pipe plug, so we can see how much vacuum our dry sump pump is pulling. But there we go. Onward and upward. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you're having a good week, and I'll see you soon with some more Ford videos.